Howdy there, YouTube. Back again with another episode of Airgotten Weapons. This time we're going to be looking at the Umarex HK MP7, the plastic gearbox version that's usually found in quite great quantities on the retail return market. Not one of my favorites. I do like the real steel version, but these are far from that. Anyway, there is a particular problem with these, with the gearboxes locking up. And I've found a very simple trick that can keep these things running practically forever as long as they have a decent setup to begin with. It turns out that the gear sets, amazingly enough, are not made to the correct specifications. I think they've got like a quarter extra tooth or something in there. And so every, I don't know, 50, 60 revolutions, the thing just jams. And if you just kick the anti-reversal lever, it resets it and you're good to go again. So what I'm going to do, what I'd previously done is drilled a hole in the gearbox so that I have access to flipping the little lever. But what I think I'm going to do for this episode is I'm going to take one of these that I haven't fixed yet, well, fixed, and drill a hole on the outside of the receiver. And what that'll do for you guys is you'll be able to just drill it straight through without having to disassemble it if you don't want to. So that's going to be the crux of this episode. And yes, I have a bunch of these. A bunch of them. And yes, they all actually do work, believe it or not. What I'm going to do with them, still haven't quite figured out. I can't sell them. I've tried. It's just not worth the effort. There's other people that they've gotten like hundreds and hundreds of these and they sell the individual parts for less than I can ship them for. So I don't really waste my time anymore. I've just kind of been playing around with them. They're kind of a fun little bullet hose for the yard. I made a pink and a blue version for my daughters so that they could play around, you know, somewhat more safely than a 400 feet per second, you know, whole hog gun for them to use just to kind of get introduced to the sport. And these are good for that, I suppose, if you want to be very responsible parents about it. I suppose that these would be a good kind of, you know, neighborhood on neighborhood. I don't even know if they do that anymore. That's what we used to do when we used to just use our fingers. But nowadays, kids got all kinds of cool stuff. So anyway, just kind of take you through a little bit. Here you got mag release here, and if you're going to disassemble this, I'll show it a little bit later. The key to the whole disassembly process is driving this pin out. If you don't drive that pin out, the gun will not come apart at all. And I also found that there's like a little 7.4 volt, I think they're for like, you know, little rechargeable devices, and they fit right in there, and if you just rewire them, there's plenty of room in there for it. They don't last forever. They're a real small battery, but they're really inexpensive, and they seem to work just fine in these. So I'll take one of these guys in half and I'll show you what's going on inside. So I mentioned it, might as well show the pink one. Anyway, so when you take this apart, you've got to, like I said, drive this pin out. And I actually had to look for a little while to find a punch that wasn't bent or exploded, just so I could not look like an idiot on camera. Anyway, you drive that out and you pull this out, and there's a little spring back here, and that little spring is your return spring. Don't lose it. Then there's screws. There's a screw here, back here, 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 here. Then you got to take this side panel off. There's one under here, there's one here, there's one back behind that pin you had to drive out, there's one on each side of the grip, there's one right there. So once you get all those suckers loose, this just lifts off and you've got this wonder of plastic marvel. Now on the Tokyo Marui versions, I'm assuming they're metal. I've seen metal gearboxes for sale, but this obviously isn't metal. So if the thing just goes Ving! This little plastic gear and this bar here have come unglued from each other, I suppose you could say. But as you can see here, I've already modified this version here with this little hole. And what that little hole does is allows you to reach in there with a little tool, and you can kick this lever back and uncock the gearbox. And it'll want to get jammed up on there. Like I said, there's one of these gears here doesn't like each other. It's got some funkiness to it. So here's your hop up. This is the trigger bar that extends up here and pushes back. This is a good reference in case yours came apart when you took it apart and you need to see how it goes back together. There's your spring alignment and everything, and it pushes back on this bar here, and your semi-auto is controlled by these little parts that are inside of here that are controlled by the switch on the other side. So not a whole lot to be said about that other than this hole and where it lines up on this. So what I'll do is I'll probably have to drill a big ass hole on this one, and then I'll drill a smaller one on the subsequent ones. But I want to be able to stick a tool down through here and reset that anti-reversal latch and decock the thing so that it's unjammed. So I'll get my drill out, we'll hit that up. Alright, there it is. I can totally get to that, and it's actually pretty well centered for where the hole's at. And I'll just cover that up with a piece of electrical tape, but I think an even kind of slicker solution is maybe I'll get a rubber stopper, stick it in there, keep the dirt from getting in there. Not that I plan on using these for anything serious, but I like having access to that, that's for sure. So if you're going to do this without taking it apart, just drill the hole in front of this sling swivel there and drill down in. You definitely don't want to hit any of those bearing surfaces or weaken the gearbox. Not that, you know, it's super strong to begin with, but that's ideally where you want the hole. If you end up drifting too far into this bearing, you might just destroy the gearbox. So don't do that. I'm not telling you to do that by any means. So I guess if you're having tentative, drill through this first with a big hole and then sink a smaller drill bit inside into the gearbox so that you get it where you want it. So when you put these back together, there's a couple things that really will mess with you. The sights, make sure that they're both in there and they're lined up properly, because if they're not, it won't go back together. And so you kind of want to have everything on this side of the gearbox body. I'm not sure why it's not focusing. You want to have everything assembled on this side so you can just put this shell back on, minus the mag catch. Anyway, so the sights need to be lined up really well, because if they're not, if they're a little bit cockeyed, it won't want to go back together. Also, this wire loves to jump up in between these two rail sections. Well, the split part of that rail, it wants to try to jump up in there when you're putting it back together if you're not careful. So I have a lot of experience with these, just because I hate to have something that doesn't work. So I end up fixing them even though I don't know what I'm going to do with them. Anyway, so the battery, you just kind of jam. No, just kidding. There's no way that would ever fit in there. This is more what I'm talking about. I said I think they're for some kind of generic, I don't know, drone or something. Not quite sure. They seem to work pretty good though, and they fit up in there nice. I mean, just like boom. See how nice? Just whoop, right in there. And 10 times better than those little piece of junks that come with them. I had one that the guy accidentally shipped me one. Usually he sells them separately, but man, what a POS that thing was. Just brand new, it wasn't good. So I think that's pretty much it. Like I said, that's the mod right there. You want to keep these things running, or you know, you got a buddy and oh, it doesn't work, it's locked up. As long as it doesn't go wee, that's how you fix it. So anyway, hope you learned something, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. And for today's extra content, we've got Chairman Mao waving to you. My grandmother got me this when she went to China. She knows I'm into military history. I thought that was pretty funny. It's one of my treasured possessions. I'm sure it says something like the greatest dude ever to live ever, but I can assure you that's not the truth. Anyway, that's all for today, and thanks for watching.